So starting chapter 8 is on the muscular system. It's a large chapter, so we'll spend quite a bit of time on it. All movements require muscles which use chemical energy to contract. So the function of your muscles is going to be contraction. It provides muscle tone that you have even when you're not using them. It helps to move body fluids and food. It generates heat, obviously very important for your heart. Your heart is a large muscle. And there are 3 types of muscle: skeletal, which is going to attach to the skeleton. Smooth is going to be like digestive system. And then cardiac muscle is specifically just your heart muscle. So for today, we're basically going to look at the composition, the structure, what's inside of those muscles, some of the microscopic parts of it. Each muscle in your body is considered an organ. So my biceps is an organ, my triceps is an organ. They're all bits and pieces of your muscular system. In that muscle, it's going to have skeletal muscle tissue, it's going to have nervous tissue that sends the message to make things work, blood, and other connective tissue. If we look specifically first at connective tissue, there's going to be layers of connective tissue called fascia, and it surrounds each muscle. So if you have beef, if you have like steak or something like that, even chicken, this is kind of a whiter color, and you can see it surround each part, each muscle. So it kind of separates muscle. This connective tissue, this fascia, extends beyond the ends of the muscle, and then it eventually will turn into tendons. And tendons are very important because they connect muscle to bone. And typically, those tendons are going to attach to the periosteum, the outside layer of the bone. Sometimes muscles are connected to each other, so from one muscle to another, and those are typically broadsheets, and that's called an aponeurosis. In your abdominal area, there are quite a few of those broad bands of connective tissue. Within the muscle, we have different layers again. So if I look at the whole muscle, epimysium, myo, is going to deal with muscle. So whenever I see that, my, typically that's going to deal with something in the muscular system. So epimysium covers the whole entire muscle. Paramysium is going to separate little bundles that make up that muscle. So this is outside, this is further in, and then each tiny cell or fiber is surrounded by an endomysium. So endo means inside. Peri typically means outside, but epi is even further. So endo, inside, peri, and then epimysium for the different layers. And do notice a muscle cell is called a fiber. So the cells of your muscular system are actually called fibers because of their shape. So this picture probably shows it the best. Here I have a muscle. It could be my biceps. So this outside part is that fascia that I was talking about. This is that dense connective tissue that covers the muscle. It becomes a tendon. A tendon connects a muscle to a bone. So here's my muscle. Inside of my entire muscle, I have separate parts that are called fascicles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're bringing one out. A fascicle is a small bundle inside of your muscle. And then inside of that, I'm going to end up having just my muscle fibers. So this would be one fiber inside of the fascicle. So layer-wise, I have that fascia, dense connective tissue. Then I have the epimysium, which is a lining around the entire muscle. Endomysium is the lining around a fascicle. So it's really, paramysium, I said that backwards. Paramysium is the lining around a fascicle. Endomysium is the lining that surrounds each individual fiber. So it's surrounding this part that's in here. And then inside of our muscles we have thick and thin filaments. And those thick and thin filaments are what actually make your muscles contract. They move together and actually cause the muscle to contract. Muscle fibers are a muscle cell. So each muscle fiber is long, they're cylindrical, they're not round like most cells. So they're single, long, cylindrical, and they are a cell. We call them a fiber. Beneath the sarcolemma, so in a muscle cell, the cell membrane, the outside, the cell membrane is called sarcolemma. I would maybe circle that. That is something you should probably know. And then sarcoplasm is the cytoplasm of a muscular cell. So typically in biology, when we study cells, we have cytoplasm and a cell membrane. In your muscular system, we have sarcoplasm as the inside part, and the sarcolemma is the cell membrane. Lots of mitochondria inside of your muscle cells. Mitochondria are very important for producing energy, ATP, if you remember that from biology classes. Your muscle cells are going to have a lot of mitochondria because they need lots of energy. So sarcoplasm, the cytoplasm of a muscle fiber, contains myofibrils, and those myofibrils basically have these thick filaments and thin filaments. Thick filaments are made up of myosin. Thin filaments are made up of actin, primarily, along with some troponin and tropomyosin. I'm more concerned that, thick filaments have myosin, thin have actin. And then the organization of these myofibrils is what gives muscles the look of striations throughout the muscle tissue. So when your muscles start to contract, I'm going to read through this, and there's a picture that we'll look at that helps explain it a little bit better. The myofibrils are made up of sarcomeres, which are considered a large piece. A sarcomere is going to extend from one Z line to the next Z line, so it's a long band. I bands are light colored. If you want to pretend that I is an L, it reminds you that it's light colored. I bands are made up of actin, so they're thin filaments, and they are right next to the Z line. Your A bands are dark colored, and they're basically where your thick and thin are going to overlap. And then in the center of this A band, there's an H zone, and that's where your myosin filaments are at, or your thick filaments. And then the M line is basically the spot that holds proteins. So if I look at this, here is a Z line, here is a Z line. So up here they are blue. This entire area would be a sarcomere. In that, I am going to have purple are my thick filaments, or myosin. Blue are my thin filaments, which are actin. And when your muscle contracts, they move closer together. And when they move closer together, that's going to affect the size of these bands that are in here. So I have the I band, which are the light colored bands. They're right next to the Z line. And then I have the A band with the H is my thick filaments. And then this dark purple is where your thin and thick kind of meet. So here you can see an actual microscopic picture of what it would look like. Here again, the blue are thin, the purple are thick. Obviously in structure, that's where the name comes from. Your purple or your thick filaments are thicker in size. And when your muscle contracts, they're going to move and slide closer together. And I will stop there for right now.